This holiday treat is usually enjoyed during Easter and other celebrations, but it's fairly common for the Christmas season. When baked, it resembles a lovely head of braided hair. The most common fillings are walnuts, but you can find now almost any type of filling and flavor. We're exploring the history and origins of Cozonac. I'm your host, Glenn Warren, and welcome to another serving of Seasons Eatings, the podcast which explores the history and origins of your favorite Christmas foods. Seasons Eatings can be found wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And if you haven't already, I would ask you to subscribe. That way you won't miss an episode when it's released, and all future episodes will be available to you without having to search for them. And if you can please take a minute and leave me a 5-star review, I would greatly appreciate it. Reviews help others find the podcast and help me know that you're enjoying what I'm doing. And if you let me know you've left a review, I'll send you a Seasons Eatings sticker as a personal thank you. Seasons Eatings is also found on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky. All the links can be found in the show notes, which also can be found at seasonseatingspodcast.com. While you're there, you can buy me an eggnog. Just click on the little cup at the top of the page and leave a donation for as little as $3. Each donation is used for the running of the podcast and its general upkeep, so any help will be wonderful. Finally, you can let me know how I'm doing, leave a suggestion for a future episode, or just say hello at seasonseatingspodcast@gmail.com. Fluffy, brown, aromatic, sweet and savory, with walnuts or raisins, poppy seeds or cocoa, this dessert spreads the scent of the holidays on any table. Whether we're talking about the Romanian Cozonac, the famous Italian panettone, the French brioche, or the German Stollen, the history of the Cozonac begins thousands of years ago, along with that of bread. That's because this apparently banal product is, after all, a special bread, ennobled with ingredients and spices according to recipes that bear the imprint of civilizations and cultures over 10,000 years of culinary history. In North Macedonia, the Macedonians for Easter traditionally bake a sweet bread with sultanas and raisins in the shape of a girl's plaited hair, a braid. That's where the name of this traditional Easter bread is derived. It's from a Bulgarian word for hair, kosa. At the origin of Cozonac is bread, and leavening and baking techniques have evolved over time. Yeast has been used since ancient times as a leavening agent for leavening dough. The oldest historical testimonies are the remains in Neolithic communities, where a form of shortbread dough was found. The Cozonac of those times was just a mixture of crushed grain soaked and baked on a hot stone. Historians say that the first shortbread may have actually been made in ancient Egypt. It was probably sweetened with honey and filled with seeds. Archaeologists have discovered among the ruins of Egypt ovens for baking, but also drawings that were made more than 4,000 years ago, which attests that the Egyptians knew how to make several types of leavened bread, some sweetened with honey and beer. Also in antiquity, the Greeks made a type of cake sweetened with honey and sprinkled with nuts, which was called a plakos. Chrysippus of Tyana mentioned, according to the sources, a recipe for Cozonac with walnuts and honey, which he mentioned he tasted in Crete. The Romans, who took over the use of yeast from the Egyptians and the Greeks, diversified and enriched the recipe for Cozonac, adding, for example, eggs, butter, and dried fruits. This is basically the recipe for bread for hundreds of years. By the Middle Ages, European bakers often made scones with dried fruit because they actually kept the fruit lasting longer. In Great Britain, the first Cozonac recipe appears in a cookbook in 1718, with a recommendation to be baked in a long and narrow form. In 14th century England, Geoffrey Chaucer mentions in the Canterbury Tales huge cakes made for special occasions. One of these cakes has been made from 13 kilograms of flour and contained butter, cream, eggs, spices, raisins, and honey. The French, who in the 19th century added the third course to the table, the dessert, are the ones who valued the Cozonac more than others. Marie Antoinette remained in people's memory for the phrase she uttered, and she was told that people didn't even have bread on the table because of poverty. Gastronomy specialists all agree that the Cozonac recipe as we know it today was consecrated in the 19th century by Europeans. Romanian tradition says that if you have Cozonac on the table, it actually means that you're celebrating. The way to prepare Romanian Cozonac was described for the first time in 1841 by the well-known writers of the time, Mihail Coganicianu and Costache Negruzi, in their original book 200 Recipes for Dishes, Cakes, and Other Household Chores. Take 3 ounce. 1 ounce was about 1 kilogram of flour. Make a batter with 1 liter of yeast and 1 liter of milk, adding 3 whole eggs. Leave it to ferment nicely and put 2.5 liters of milk, 18 whole eggs, 3 liters of melted butter, and the necessary salt, and knead it until it comes off your hands. Then leave it to rise well, and after they have risen well, turn the dough over, let it sit a while longer, then making buns, brush them with egg yolk and put them in the oven. In the book The Kitchen of the Romanian Peasant from 1916, Mikhail Pescu talked about Romanian traditions related to Cozonac. Cozonac are known more in Moldova, Bucovina, and Bessarabia. They have different shapes according to the vessel in which they're placed. If they're put on a shovel, they look like bread. To make them yellow, saffron paste is put in them, which doesn't spoil their taste. Put sugar in or honey in the buns to make them sweet, or yeast or cheese is added to the cakes so they rise well. And in some places they actually are in the shape of a horseshoe. The Cozonacs baked in the regions of Romania can be long or round, simple or braided, but they're all Romanian and well grown. Fillings are according to tastes and times. In Romania itself, there are many iterations of Cozonac, coated in poppy seeds or not, filled with walnuts, dried fruit, rahat, which is Turkish delight. The list goes on. The recipes actually differ from family to family, but regional variations can be discerned, offering a good lesson on how history has shaped Romanian cuisine. For example, Cozonac in Transylvania tend towards a German influence. A filling is made out of coarsely rather than finely chopped walnuts, burnt sugar, and a poppy seed topping, as a result for the centuries-long presence of the Saxons in the region, as well as due to the Austrian and after 1867 Austro-Hungarian oversight of Transylvania throughout the 18th and 19th centuries. On the other hand, Cozonac in Moldova, especially those baked for Easter, tend to be round, tall, and without a filling. In Ukrainian tradition, that region having been more strongly penetrated by Slavic influences. We'll talk about the problems you may encounter while working with an enriched dough for Cozonac after the break. Don't you wish the holidays would last the entire year? Well, now it can. Head on over to mymerrychristmas.com where you can enjoy the holidays all year long. You can chat with other Christmas enthusiasts on any topic you can think of. Movies, books, cooking, decorating, anything. If it's about Christmas, it's here. Joining My Merry Christmas is completely free. But if you become a Premier member, you can enjoy extra bonuses such as a yearly Christmas card exchange and Kringle Radio, Santa's exclusive Christmas radio station. For only $19.95, you can become a Premier member of mymerrychristmas.com for a full year. So head on over to mymerrychristmas.com and start enjoying Christmas all year long.
Hi everyone, I'm Dwayne from the Tinsel Tunes podcast, and I have a questionably unhealthy obsession with Christmas, and I love Christmas music. So come with me on a journey as I go into detail about the history and stories behind a wide range of Christmas music. For instance, did you know that Silent Night has the honour of being the most recorded Christmas song of all time, and has been recorded over 137,000 times by separate artists? Or that White Christmas was actually written in the height of summer? Each song, either recent or a golden oldie, has a background, and I want to share them with you. Come join us for our second season and listen at tinseltunes.com. We are on all the main podcast services, or you can find us with a simple Google search. Also follow us on all the social networking platforms, and I hope to interact with you soon.
Making your Cozonac can be a workout if you don't have the modern electrical gadgets we have today. The stand mixer is very much your friend with this recipe because the dough for this bread needs to be worked well. The Cozonac is always prepared in a warm place away from cold air currents. The ingredients must be at room temperature when preparing the dough, and the vessel must be warm. The yeast must not be scalded, but prepared with warm milk. The successful dough must be sticky, but not sticking to your hands, elastic, and the consistency of an earlobe of all things. So you can slightly pull at it, but it doesn't tear away. The more you knead, the better. That actually builds up the gluten strands in the dough. The main characteristic of enriched breads is they contain fat, usually in the form of butter. The fat contents gives enriched bread the added benefit of staying fresher longer than lean breads. Lean breads being breads that don't have added extra ingredients, so basically flour, water, salt, and yeast. Some enriched breads, especially loaves that bake in a pan like Cozonac, can also be a good place to start if you are a beginner. Fats play a crucial role in enriched breads. Whether you're using butter, oil, lard, or even coconut oil, the type of fat you choose will directly affect the final loaf. Fats tend to tenderize the crumb, making it soft and velvety, but too much can actually weaken a gluten structure, leading to a dense or collapsed loaf. It's essential to balance the fat content to achieve the desired texture. Eggs are also another vital ingredient, acting as emulsifiers that bind fat and water together. Without eggs, the dough can separate during baking, leading to an unsatisfactory texture. Eggs also add that richness, moisture, and color to the bread, making them indispensable in recipes like Cozonac. And now, sugar isn't just for sweetness. It also plays a role in tenderizing the crumb and helping the crust brown during baking. When you see a loaf of bread that's been baked and it's a rich, dark, golden brown, that's called the Maillard reaction. That's the sugar breaking down in the flour, in the dough, and actually reacting to the heat. However, too much sugar can slow down fermentation, by drawing water away from the yeast, leading to longer proofing times. There's probably a little bit of a fallacy that, the yeast actually eats the sugar, and actually they don't. They actually eat the starch that they convert into sugar. Finding the right balance is key to successful enriched breads. And now milk actually contributes both fat and moisture to the dough. Whole milk, with its mix of fat, sugar, and protein, adds complexity to the bread's flavor and helps create a tender crumb. Some bakers opt for milk powder, so that's dried powder, to control hydration more precisely, but it's essential to adjust the water content accordingly. When I was in baking school, that's exactly what we did, and it was always plain water and then added dry milk powder. I know it's a bit harder for the home baker, but you still can get milk powder in a packet. When mixing and kneading, remember that fat inhibits gluten development, so enriched doughs might take a little longer to knead. So be patient. It's always said to make bread when you're angry. That way you can get out all your aggressions when kneading the dough. Allow the dough to reach the right consistency where it's smooth and elastic, but not too stiff. Proofing enriched doughs can take a little longer as well because of the presence of sugar and fat, which slow down the yeast activity. But keep an eye on the dough and don't rush the process. Extended proofing is often necessary to achieve the right rise and texture. An easy way to check if your dough is proofed enough is that if you put your finger and indent the dough, if the indent stays, it's not done. It's not fully proofed. The indent has to slowly rise back up and reshape. That's when you know your dough is ready. And when it comes to shaping and baking, the high fat content in enriched doughs make them a little easier to shape as the fat coats the gluten strands and prevents sticking. However, be mindful of the baking temperature. Fats are very sensitive to heat, and overbaking can lead to a dry, crumbly loaf. One of the most common things for enriched doughs is a collapsed loaf. So that is often caused by either too much fat or an improper proofing. To prevent this, ensure your dough has the right balance of ingredients and don't rush the proofing process. Achieving a consistent crumb can also be a little bit tricky. Crumb is what we say in the baking industry is how the texture of the bread looks when it's done. So a tight crumb often feels gummy in the mouth, so all the strands are close together, and a loose crumb, when you pick up the bread and try to pull it apart, it just crumbles in your hand. To get a tender, uniform crumb, mix your dough thoroughly and allow it to proof fully. So proper kneading and gentle handling are key to avoiding a dense or uneven crumb. And finally, don't be afraid to experiment with flavor enhancements. So infused oils, alternative fats like cocoa butter, and inclusions like dried fruit or nuts can elevate your enriched bread to a new height. That's why Cozonac is such a great bread to have during the holidays, so that you can have cocoa and walnuts that will bring flavors of your bread over the top. That's especially important if you want to impress your guests during the holiday season. Now, in Romania, the recipes for trimmings differ rather significantly between the regions. The dough is essentially similar throughout the country. So you have a plain sweet bread made from flour, eggs, milk, butter, sugar, and salt. But depending on the region, one may add to it any of the following ingredients. So you have the traditional walnuts, but you can add raisins, grated orange or lemon zest, hazelnuts, or a vanilla or even a rum flavoring. The Cozonac may be sprinkled with poppy seeds on top, but other styles dictate the use of a filling, usually a ground walnut mixture with cocoa powder. The dough is rolled flat with a pin and the filling is spread on the whole dough, and the whole is rolled back into a shape vaguely resembling a pinwheel. If you ever made a bûche de Noël, that's basically a rolled filling on a cake sponge. Then after you roll it up, you cut it in half, and then you braid it, putting the other sides over each other, and then put it into a long pan to cook that way, or you can put it into a round pan and it looks kind of like a braided wreath. And then you bake the product and the filling forms into a swirl, so adding to the character of the bread. And once finished, you have this beautiful loaf of bread, and you will often hear Romanians describe the ideal Cozonac as puffy or pillowy, and having that special quality that it actually comes apart in thin sheets when you pull it apart. So during the holiday season, Cozonac is usually served as a dessert after the Christmas dinner, usually pre-sliced and fanned out on a plate. Often the sliced Cozonac isn't finished because there's so much of it, so it's enjoyed the next day as toasted for breakfast. So no matter how you try it, you have to have a little bit of Cozonac this holiday season. I'm Glenn Warren, and thank you for listening to this serving of Seasons Eatings. Seasons Eatings is available wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And please, if you can leave a review about the show so we can spread the Christmas cheer. Also, I would love to hear from you. Send me an email at seasonseatingspodcast@gmail.com and let me know how you like the show. If you let me know you've left a review, I'll send you a Seasons Eating sticker for your trouble, as well as my unwavering gratitude. And if you're feeling extra generous this season, you can buy me an eggnog. Head on over to seasonseatingspodcast.com and click on the little cup in the corner. And while you're there, check out our merch. There's also some great gifts for anyone and everyone for the holiday season. I've added a couple new items, so be sure to check them out. All at seasonseatingspodcast.com. All music for Seasons Eatings is used under the Creative Commons license.